presented by the Prime Minister in this debate, because it seems like they have a giant pot of money that will give everyone their fantastic dream house. It seems like they have this twisted idea that the single most important thing for a person is to be able to customise their living space so that they can have it exactly how they want. That doesn't recognise that governments have limited financial capital, have limited abilities, and must prioritise the most fundamental needs of their people before going off on wild and ridiculous flights of fantasy. I want to have a look at 3 points of rebuttal before I move on to our case. Firstly, I do want to have a look in more detail at the role of government and how their model would actually work. Secondly, I want to look at the idea that ownership is key to people's self-actualisation in society. Finally, I want to have a look at this rant against capitalism that seemed to be proposing communism or something ridiculous instead. Right, let's talk about this. Ladies and gentlemen, what they've told us here is that the role, well, no, firstly on their model, right? We think what they've told us is that people who would otherwise be getting emergency shelter should be getting enough money to buy their houses. How? If you're in the place where you're homeless, you don't have any other assets. Giving you a little bit of money equivalent to your rental won't help you buy your own house. And if they do, ladies and gentlemen, give you that much, that's ridiculous. More likely is you're going to take a mortgage out with this. We've seen just how badly mortgages work for people with subprime earning potential in the United States of America. We think that if they truly, we believe that the true priority here must be on government spending this money to provide absolute basic shelter for people. That's our second point of rebuttal, about ownership being key to the private space. We heard that people need a sphere that is individually their own. We think in some way they're right on this. We think people do need shelter. People need shelter to protect them from the ravage of the elements, to provide them with a base from which they can base their life and development. But this doesn't mean that it is the obligation of the government to provide them with everything that they want. It doesn't mean that the house they should be given fulfills all their fantasies. Many people would like to live in my house, but I don't think the government can give this to everyone. We think the priority is basic shelter, and then we heard this idea that you can't plan for your future when you don't have, own your own house, that your landlord can be a bastard. Well, firstly, maybe we should have better laws protecting people from their landlords. That sort of legislation exists. Secondly, many people rent incredibly happily, like most people in this room. And thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, we think that this is just ludicrous, and I forgot why. Aside from all the other reasons I've just given you. We think, ladies and gentlemen, the final part, that this is about status. Well, the only way to abolish status is to give everyone the same house. And that's simply not possible. And we challenge them to show us how the hell they plan to abolish status differentials in our society. The final point was this rant against capitalism, and then in slightly more nuanced levels, some capitalist problems and markets. Well, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like unless they want to come out here and propose a total wealth redistribution, we don't see how they can finance any of this. And then what they told us is that housing and capitalist markets lead to inflation in housing prices. Now, I'll show you in my first point. We think the exact effect of this policy is to inflate the price of houses, to make it harder for everyone, because when you start putting more money in the hands of people to buy, builders know that, and they charge more for houses. Secondly, we heard that people need assets in order to borrow. Firstly, we say most people in this room can get loans because they have future earning potential, because we have intellectual capital. You don't need physical assets in order to get a loan. Secondly, we think there are many other types of assets besides housing, and we point to subprime mortgages as a great example of where housing assets were a particularly bad asset to be leveraging on. And finally, in terms of boosting boom and bust cycles, well, it was US policy that tried to increase home ownership in a very similar way, that led to more people taking out mortgages and has led to the current financial crisis we're in Shengwu go.
Well, our point is not that communism is better than capitalism. Our point is that the only morally tolerable sort of capitalist society is one where everyone owns assets and therefore shares in the benefits.
No, Shengwu, we believe that the only tolerable capitalist society is one where people's most fundamental needs are looked out for by the state, and where they are provided with the minimum necessary to exercise their own choices and make their own life. That is completely different from giving people everything that they ever wanted. 3 points. We believe this inflates the prices of housing and therefore defeats their whole policy. Secondly, we believe that the priority of role of government should be a safety net. And thirdly, we believe that some people will be affected by this policy, but only the ones who really shouldn't. Inflating prices. Ladies and gentlemen, we think suppliers and sellers become more than aware that the government is giving money to people in order to buy houses. The result is that they charge more for those houses. And I hate to use an Australian example, but our government has actually tried this. We give $7,000 to $14,000 grants to first home buyers, and the result hasn't been to make housing more affordable. It's to add $7,000 to $14,000 to the prices of all new homes. So we don't see how this has really increased affordability. But what it has done, ladies and gentlemen, is waste money. It's wasted government money and taken that money away from the essentials. That's my second point, ladies and gentlemen, about the priority of the role of government. I've already covered this in a lot of detail, but we believe that the priority here for a government in any society has to be to provide you with the bare minimum that you need in order to make your choices. We provide education not so that everyone can get a PhD, but so that everyone has up to secondary school education, the level of numerical and mathematical literacy that they need in order to be able to make their own way through society. That's what capitalism is about. And what people need is shelter. And that's why we don't want money being wasted in this ridiculous scheme when that money should be spent on providing emergency shelter to people who have nothing. We don't think the priority here is on all of that. The priority must be on essentials, and we think the government has a lot to do in fixing those essentials. That's why a lot of people are homeless in the developed world, because the government hasn't got enough money to provide all the people with nothing, even basic emergency shelter. We don't want to talk more, right? But the final point here, ladies and gentlemen, is we think that this pricing signal will cause some people to try and buy homes. We think for many it won't. The smart financial ones would realise that they're probably not getting a better deal, and so they won't buy houses any more than they would before. But some will see this as a pricing signal from the government that says they should buy. Those who don't understand that the net price at the end of the day is pretty much the same. We think these people with poor understanding of their fiscal position are precisely the worst people to be buying houses, because you're not ever able to give people enough money that they can buy any house that they want. What people do, ladies and gentlemen, is take out mortgages and get shackled to debt. And we believe the people who will be most affected by this policy are the ones who are least capable of understanding the ramifications of the debt that they are taking on. And that is the subprime mortgage crisis in the United States of America. People who took on debt who were not capable of understanding the true ramifications. When their assets began to plummet, they ended up losing everything, ladies and gentlemen. We believe the government must be smart. We believe the government must provide essentials. We believe the government must accept reality. Thank you.